The gaming industry is a massive commercial Goliath, and honestly, it's a very strange beast at times. Now, we as gamers are generally shown only a carefully curated sliver of how the sausage is truly made, yet every so often a developer or publisher might screw up enough that it ends up making headlines. So let's take a look at them. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 video game embarrassments you won't believe. Number 10. Rockstar got caught pirating their own games. Now, there are understandably few things that video game publishers loathe more than piracy, and they'll take extreme measures if necessary to ensure their games can't be stolen, even releasing it with performance-crippling DRM like de novo. Yet Rockstar Games, who unsurprisingly are very anti-piracy, were recently shown up in hilariously embarrassing fashion when the real reason for Manhunt's historically janky Steam release was revealed. You see, Manhunt has been a bug-filled mess for many years on Steam, with players having to use third-party mods to get it to work in a playable state. But YouTuber Vadim M recently discovered that this is because Rockstar uploaded a cracked version of the game to Steam. In order to quickly circumvent the game's original DRM, Rockstar simply deferred to piracy group Razor 1911 and used their crack to beat the copy protection. Inspecting the game's code reveals Razor 1911's signature was inside it, as well as in two other Rockstar published games, Max Payne 2 and Midnight Club 2. The glitches were actually caused by Rockstar attempting to cover their tracks and remove evidence of the crack from Manhunt's code, in turn accidentally activating another layer of copy protection which intentionally infests the game with bugs. Absolutely wild. Number 9. EA forced Anthem to release just after 15 months of development. It's a damn shame that Anthem never got whipped into shape, because BioWare's multiplayer action RPG had a ton of potential in the live service space. Its content-lacking, mechanically clunky launch led EA to announce that the game was to receive a substantial gameplay overhaul, but in February 2021, a year after this announcement, EA confirmed that all development on Anthem had ceased and the game was effectively dead. Now, numerous deep dive investigative pieces have been written about Anthem's extremely troubled development over the years, but back in May, former Anthem developer Ian Satterdalan revealed on Twitter that the entire game was created in just 15 months. Though Anthem had been in development since 2012, it was iterated upon numerous times before this version, which eventually released, entered full production. The final game was made in 15 months, with BioWare employees apparently working 90-hour weeks to get the job done, a time frame which Ian called unheard of for a game of that scope. And you know what? He's absolutely right. Anthem's end result is in no way a poor reflection on the developers who clearly worked incredibly hard on it, but rather higher-ups at EA who felt compelled to rush the AAA tentpole to market long before it was ready. That they did so while grinding BioWare's team to dust isn't just embarrassing, it's outright unhinged in an era of game development where AAA games can easily take 5 years to bring to market. Number 8. CounterStrike 2 is Valve's lowest-rated game ever. The elation over Valve's shadow-dropping CounterStrike 2 back in September was incredibly short-lived, as players soon enough dogpiled it for performance issues, glitches, lacking content present in predecessor Counter-Strike Global Offensive, and Valve deciding to remove Global Offensive from Steam altogether. Now, this created enough of a perfect storm that Counter-Strike 2's Steam user review quickly landed it a mixed rating, making it the lowest-rated Valve-published game on the platform. Now, granted, Valve's hit rate is incredibly high with the likes of Half-Life, Portal, Dota and Left 4 Dead amongst its back catalogue, but even so, the disastrous launch was doubtless a huge embarrassment for the company. Valve was also further criticised for releasing the game as an update to Global Offensive, meaning that Global Offensive rave reviews were counted towards Counter-Strike 2's overall total, resulting in its overall user reviews still registering a unearned very positive rating. While it's incredibly likely that the game will be in a vastly superior state months from now, it's a horrible look for arguably the most anticipated FPS of the last few years. Number 7. Nintendo uses fan-made emulators, despite saying emulation stifles innovation. Even accepting that Nintendo can be a bit stuck in the past where their business decisions are concerned, this makes them come off as pretty damn ridiculous. And even if you don't know that much about the company, you'll likely be aware that they're extremely anti-emulation, and back in May even outright claimed that emulation stifles innovation. It's tough not to view that statement through a hypocritical lens though, given that last year, highly credible leaks revealed that Nintendo used fan-made software to help create Game Boy emulators for the Switch. Between this and Nintendo being Having previously caught using emulators and downloaded ROMs on their own products, it's something of a bad look for them to come down so hard on emulation as a practice. Obviously, Nintendo holds ownership of these games and isn't doing anything legally wrong, but for a company so doggedly committed to killing the emulation scene under a less than pervasive guise of privacy prevention, they do well to remember how much they've actually benefited from it. Number 6. Bigots created a pronoun removal mod for Starfield, which then got removed. Bethesda's divisive sci-fi epic Starfield quite rightly includes options in its character creation suite for players to choose their own pronouns, but of course, this caused every bigoted crybaby from the internet to hitch a fit about it. Not content to simply moan about people having an array of options to express themselves, one suspect modder devoted their spare time to creating a mod which removed pronoun selection from the game altogether. This unsurprisingly frustrated many players who turned to modding site Nexus Mods, where the offended mod was hosted, to take action. And that they did, promptly removing the mod from their site while offering an accompanying statement stating that the removal of diversity, while appealing to many, does not promote a positive modding community. Needless to say, being thin-skinned enough to install a mod that removes pronouns that you do not need to touch, well, it is definitely a hill to die on, alright? Number 5. Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion has an in-game painting with a Getty Images watermark. Mere days after Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion was released, players noticed a strange piece of art accidentally included in the game, a painting that had a Getty Images watermark in the middle. Players who entered the Shinra Mansion during the game's 8th chapter can find the painting on a wall with the offending watermark. It's, of course, incredibly jarring to see such a basic mistake make it into a Square Enix published game, not to mention the hilarious implication that Getty Images exists within the world of the Final Fantasy franchise. And though some raised their pitchforks to criticize the company for ripping off a licensed image, it's far more likely that it was simply included as a placeholder which a member of the team forgot to replace prior to release. Sloppy though it is, nobody associated with either Square Enix or Getty Images has publicly commented on the matter, suggesting that neither party was ultimately all that fussed about it. Number 4. RedFalls' concurrent Steam player has hit single figures. Now, expectations weren't exactly high for Redfall when it launched back in May, and given the utterly indifferent response from critics and players alike to the open-world FPS, it already feels like it's fallen off the face of the earth. Yet while you might have assumed that at least a couple hundred die-hard fans were still plugging away at it on Steam, that's not quite the case. Not at all. It was recently reported that Redfall's concurrent player count had regularly been dropping to the single digits, had even plummeted as low as 2 players in early October, making it impossible to even form a 4-player group. Though there will of course be some playing Redfall on Xbox Game Pass, it's a dire indication of the game's longevity, no matter that Bethesda's Pete Hines recently expressed confidence that people will want to play it on Game Pass a decade from now. If only we could bottle your optimism, Pete. Number 3. Diablo 4's first Battle Pass didn't include enough currency to buy anything. Though Diablo 4 launched to largely positive reviews from critics, the player response has been decidedly more polarizing, criticizing the unbalanced gameplay, unsatisfying endgame experience, overtly intrusive presence of microtransactions, and the meager offerings of its Battle Pass, the latter of which was a particular sticking point for those who bought in, given that the $10 Season 1 Battle Pass didn't actually include enough currency to actually buy anything from the in-game store. The pass included 666 platinum, see what they did there, yet with the cheapest cosmetic item on sale costing 800 platinum, while players were left a little short. Naturally, the revelation caused mass outrage amongst the fanbase, who felt that Blizzard were employing predatory practices to try and persuade players to buy more platinum with real-world money. Given that last year's mobile release Diablo Immortal was raked over the coals for its grotesque microtransaction implementation though, it shouldn't be terribly surprising that this nonsense made it into the series' next big AAA title. Number 2. The Lord of the Rings Golem's developer apology was actually written by ChatGPT. We're no doubt all familiar with the cliched, ever-expected developer apology tweet, which typically gets sent out a few days after a new game launches in a less than acceptable state. And the atrocious Lord of the Rings Golem was certainly no exception to this, which released to the worst reviews of any mainstream video game this year, or so far at least. Just a day after Golem hit storefronts, developer Daedalic Entertainment tweeted a formal apology for the game's poor quality, and it was a totally standard boilerplate concessionary statement. Yet recently, several former Daedalic Daedalic staff members told German gaming outlet Game2 that the apology itself had actually been drafted by the AI chatbot ChatGPT, and that Daedalic themselves had no knowledge of it, and it was instead independently created by publisher Nacon. It's a jaw-droppingly cheeky act of soullessness. And the fact that nobody at Nacon even proofread the apology enough to notice that it referred to the game as The Lord of the Ring Golem is just the greatest indication that this project just didn't have any care put into it at any level. And number one, all of Fall Guys' content was accidentally unvaulted for 30 minutes, and players loved it. Now, last November, Fall Guys developer Mediatonic revealed that they would be introducing vaulting to the game, a system whereby round types would be rotated in and out of the game, being placed in the vault for an indeterminate period before then being reintroduced. And Mediatonic claimed that this was to ensure that the game remained stable with each new update, but players nevertheless saw it as them being denied gameplay variety and having content artificially gatekept. And the huge unpopularity of vaulting was brought to bear in totally unintentional fashion at the start of the year, when a server outage caused the vaulting mechanism to fail, resulting in Fall Guys suddenly becoming flooded with all of the vaulted content once more. The outage only ended up lasting around 30 minutes, yet fans certainly took notice of how much more fun the game was when all of the created content was available free of restrictions. Players even tweeted out the hashtag #UnVaultFallGuys, which quickly went viral and maintained momentum for several months. Mediatonic have unfortunately stuck to their guns on the matter, despite that glorious half hour of unvaulting giving players a small sliver of what they wanted, and indeed still want. And there we go, my friends. Those were 10 video game embarrassments you won't believe. I hope that you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comment section below. And if you want to chat to me over on the social medias, I am at RetroJ, with the O being a 0, over on Instagram and Twitter. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.